the mentality of the retro gamer compared to the modern gamer is different, obviously, right? As with anything in this world, as time goes on, things change, right? Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Sometimes, things such as technology, receive upgrades, and sometimes they're revolutionary, sometimes they're gradual, and then sometimes they don't. Sometimes they change for the worse. Sometimes they get discontinued. A company that was prevalent in the past no longer is either around or is just making subpar products or just, it ain't the same. I think of BlackBerry, the company BlackBerry that made the cell phones. Like, I was such a BlackBerry guy. Like, even when clearly touchscreen phones were dominating, and I think this is probably like the what like I'm gonna say like 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. I clearly saw that everyone around me had an Apple phone or an Android phone that they both were touchscreen. And I stuck boldly to my BlackBerry because I liked the keyboard. I liked the size factor. It was small. You could just, I had my little leather BlackBerry case. I would just shove my phone in there. My cousin has a picture of me in my uniform when I was working at a hospital, a different hospital at the time, and I had my little BlackBerry pouch, and I was just like, God damn, man, times change. Modern gamers, I mean, I'm in my late 30s. Modern gamers are like a new species to me. Like, I feel like such a purist, and at first I thought that it was because I'm older. Like, I speak to modern gamers, and when I say modern gamers, I mean like someone who's in their early 20s, mid 20s, young guys who are playing video games now. And it of course, first of all, it blows my mind because they'll say like, oh, my childhood game was like Crash Bandicoot, and I'm just like, I always think like, damn, when I played Crash Bandicoot, I was like already on this earth for like 12 years. So their child, and when they meant childhood, they meant like they were like not even double digits. They were like, 9, 8 years old. So right off the bat, that blows my mind always when they do that. But even though everyone is different, it's hard to generalize things. But there are some things that modern gamers do share that they all have in common, regardless of like what walk of life they're from. And I mean, I don't know. I didn't do the statistics. I didn't do the research. But from all of the modern gamers that I've met, they do have one thing that's in common, and that is impatience. It's not the greatest thing. It's not the greatest virtue to have. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite of a virtue. But I noticed that like modern gamers want their games quick. They want to be immersed in the action quickly. They don't want to read. They don't care for pacing or build up. They want to jump in, get action within the first few minutes, and then have that action steadily, keep it at a steady pace all the way until they log out or shut off their system or however they're playing. We know they won't be playing in Stadia. That's which, by the way, I heard that Google is completely pulling the plug on Stadia, which it's not surprising. Like, I think most people, at least in my circle, forgot about Stadia for years now. So sucks for the Stadia players, though. Anyways, I it's weird to me because I grew up at a time where video games were like the most popular video games, the ones that like were put globally on the map that everyone played, are franchises that still continue to this day, and they all share the same thing. They're arcadey. It's about jumping on top of an enemy, scoring points to get lives. Like, it's the music is vibrant and catchy, and now it's iconic when I look back. I'm talking about games like Mario. I'm talking about games like, Space Invaders was a little before my time, a lot before. Well, not a lot, but it was before my time. So I will say that during my time, it was like, Atari stuff, like Pitfall and Mario and, Contra, and all these games all share a similar. They're all in the same vein. They're all, left to right screen. Uh, they're pick up and play. Anyone can play, from an adult to a kid. It's brilliant, actually. The formula is so simple, but it's so addictive. And I grew up during that time, so as time went on, even in consoles like the Nintendo that have like a limited technology, you only could do so much with the memory in a Nintendo game, in an NES game, or a Famicom game, whatever region you're in. And they did the best they could, and lots of times it was impressive. Lots of times it wasn't. There were games that had fantastic music, even though it was like chip tunes. At least that's what it's known now. I don't know what they called it back then. Probably chip tunes. They had cool music. They had pretty cool graphics. They had some really futuristic, like, effects. Sometimes there'll be like an explosion effect, or sometimes they had even voice clips. Like, people went all out with the limited amount of technology and resources and memory that they had for a Nintendo game. So at first everything was arcadey, and then as time went on, these games that were open world games, they were games that were the complete opposite of what we were first shown. And these games are like Zelda. These games are like Dragon Warrior, Final Fantasy, Metal Gear Solid. All these were Nintendo games, and you play these games, and clearly they're not for children. It looks like it's marketed for children. First of all, it's on a Nintendo, which was at the time mostly played by children. And considering that the first plethora of games were all arcade oriented, jump up, get the coin, score oriented, and then they made this shift towards these specific games. Well, I wouldn't say shift, because arcade games were still much more prevalent. They were much more bigger. But these games started coming out, Metal Gears, the Zeldas, the Final Fantasies, and it made me realize, like, wow, this is more than what I would have ever imagined a video game can be. Open world. You mean to tell me that my little character can go anywhere he wants? And then not only that, I have to figure out where he has to go, and I would have to do a particular event or pick up a particular object and then move from that side of the screen to the other side of the screen, which is massive, and you're just out on the field, you're just running around and you're killing. It gave me this feeling of grandeur, this feeling of exploration that I've been hooked since I first played games like Zelda, or games like even a little later, but still early in the grand scheme of things, games like Shadowrun for the Sega Genesis, which I've brought up here several times. These games are that influential to me. So it was possible for games that are traditionally marketed in a system that's meant for kids to be more towards mature teenagers to even adults, with the games that I just said. So as time went on, you certain people like me, like my demographic of people who wanted a little more than just the arcadey stuff, the simple bubble gum, quick pick up and play. I still loved games like that, and then sometimes you would have in between game, right? A game that had a lot of RPG elements and like exploration, but it also was arcadey and score points. You can score points to get lives and get some sort of benefits. To me, one of those games that kind of met in the middle was like Mega Man. right? Mega Man was one of those games that like it was arcadey left to right. You jump up, you shoot stuff, everything's bright and colorful, everything explodes. But it also had some pretty ingenious RPG elements, as in like after you destroy a boss, you get his weapon. The boss has a specific weapon, and you would have to use that weapon towards another boss, and each boss has a different weakness, and you have to kill them in this particular orders. I'm explaining Mega Man to you like it hasn't been around for like fucking 40 years, but you understand. So sometimes you would get that in between game, and that's brilliant. I'm willing to make that I'll not sacrifice, but I'm ready to make that deal. Like, sure, if you want to mix both of them up, that's probably the best thing to do. It's also introducing, like, if you're like a video game company who has been making arcadey stuff for a long time and kind of want to make a voyage, a maiden voyage into games that are deeper and more, more mature, and then this would be your game. Your bridge would be games like Mega Man and stuff like that. So your segue to it. So I grew up at a time where arcade games were the norm. Then as time went on, I realized that I wanted my games to have more. I wanted them to have not only more replayability, but more meaning, more depth. And I started looking more towards games like that are RPG oriented. So I don't know if it's because I've been like I've been conditioned as time went on to be patient. We went through the loading time phases, PlayStation 1, you remember them things. Sega Saturn, like I went from Atari all the way to today. I own a PS5, but I fully transitioned to PC. So that's what I'm doing now most of the time. And honestly, my PlayStation 5 is boxed up as we speak, which I never thought would happen. I've had the PlayStation since PlayStation 1, and I've had every entry of the PlayStation since all the way till 5. And I always thought that I would be a console guy, until I started to see Sony's business practices, which I'm not the biggest fan of, to be honest with you. But pick your poison, because there's so many other companies and corporations out there, even that are not video game related, that kind of follow the same business model. Everybody's moving to this I saw the word today. I don't want to say it, but I'm gonna say it. It's like Netflixication or something like that. Basically, it just means that everybody's moving to this subscription model. You have to subscribe for everything. It's like it's almost rare right now for you to get a product, to buy a product, and then just have that product, and then have them, like, for example, if it's something like a program, like an editing program or a Photoshop equivalent, it's almost like now you just can't buy the damn thing. You have to subscribe to it. Or I seen one not so long ago that I used to use a long time ago. It's called Wandera or something like that. I'm not good with these things. I barely know how to turn on my computer. All right, I'm not that dumb. All right, inexperienced. You pick your word. I'm okay with computers. I'm not. I wouldn't say that I'm a beginner, but I wouldn't say that I'm like barely in the middle. I lost my train of thought here, which was expected. Oh yeah, so I've been a PlayStation guy for a long time, and then I noticed Sony's business practices, and I decided to, like, I'm not gonna support that, man. The whole paying online thing, which is fine. Even though you get two free games, quote unquote free games, they're free as long as you have the subscription. I'm not cool with that. I'm like, when you have a PC, you notice that you don't have to deal with any of that. You don't have to jump through these hoops, and oh yeah, sure, you don't get two free games or whatever on the PC, but I'm like, I beg to differ. You've got the Epic Game Store. They give you my entire library is free games from the Epic game, and that's not an exaggeration. I mean, like, every single game. That's cool stuff, man. DRM is a whole different other. That's a whole other beast, you know. So yeah. Um, moving on. I don't know. I feel like me and the modern gamer don't have a lot in common. Even though we're part of the same family, we're like distant cousins. And I'm not a big fan of impatience in general. I mean, outside of video games, just whether it's a friend, a coworker, like if I see someone showing impatience, it almost it's like nails in a chalkboard to me. It's like it's deeply irritating. I don't know why, because I see it as like a weakness. I'm like, work on that. You know, especially if you're like my age. And I'm talking a lot of shit because I can be very impatient too, and I say that all the time to my friends and stuff. I'm like, I'm not really that patient of a guy, but here's the difference. I fucking try. I always try, like whenever I feel that anger boiling inside of me, I take deep breaths or I kind of remove myself from the situation. Like I try, like I don't just throw temper tantrums and just tell everyone to accept me for who I am without even attempting to change. The modern gamer nowadays, that's not their only trait, being impatient, but I would say that that's one of the predominant traits is they're impatient. They want everything to be quick. And as opposed to, I noticed that older gamers, they're okay with reading. They're okay with exploring and taking their time and watching the cutscenes and just fully immersing themselves in a game, just savoring it. You know what I mean? Every nook and cranny of the game. I feel like that's a trait that's more reserved nowadays for older gamers like me. And I mean, look, man, the times change. I feel like it's just not in video games. It's also in social media. I what I mean is like having short videos where everything is rapid fire and everything is brightly colored, and it's always that YouTuber putting his hands on his face like he's shocked, and you know and a neon colored thumbnail with certain words in his description capitalized like this shocked me, and it's like, Jesus Christ, it's rough to see that because it's like they're whoring themselves out. That's what YouTubers are doing nowadays. They're whoring themselves out to the system. Some of them are okay with that and they're like, look, I'm playing the game. If this is what you have to do to play the game, to remain successful, to have a steady flow income, then that's what I'm going to do. And some of them are almost embarrassed to do it, but they still do it. Some of them are like, oh, here we go. Let me show a little leg. Oh boy, here comes the Johns. Oh boy, whatever. I got to do what I got to do. Some of them are reluctant to play the game, but they do it because they have a staff or, they have to they have payroll, they have to pay people, and that's a big worry for someone who's like an entrepreneur. From what I see, obviously I'm not, but from what I've read from I'm just read from reports like I'm a fucking CIA operative or something. From what I've gathered from like podcasts and stuff like that, whenever I hear an entrepreneur talk, I feel like one of their main worries is payroll. Like one of their main worries is other people, looking out for other people. It's funny because I just found out, like maybe like 15 minutes ago, if that the average video game player is 31 years old. That's wild. I would have thought it was a lot younger, because I do feel like video games still have that taboo of like, oh, hey, you're wasting your time, which is weird, right? Because the same people that say, oh, you played a game for 6 hours yesterday, oh man, that's a waste of time. Then you ask them, what'd you do? Oh, I've watched 7 hours of that Jeffrey Dahmer show, the Netflix one, and you're like, wait a minute. So it's socially acceptable to sit down and watch Netflix for 6 hours, but it's not socially acceptable to play a video game for 6 hours. Which one is it? They're both entertainment, right? Except one is better, and that's video games. You know what I mean? It's weird. It's society's weird like that. And one thing I will say, and one thing that I learned that I'm always going to carry with me is that just because something is normal doesn't mean that it's right. And just because something is normalized doesn't mean that it's right for you. So, there's lots of things that are common that people don't bat an eye at. And and if you sit down and you think about it, you go, that's fucking weird. Like, like smoking cigarettes, for example. You're taking plants, you're lighting them on fire, and it's not good for you. And then, you're just sitting there and you're inhaling this thing, right? That's normal. You see some guy smoking a cigarette, you're not going to stop him and go, what are you doing? What is this contraption? You're just kind of you're not going to give him a whole lecture about his health unless you're one of those guys. And don't be one of those guys, please. But there's lots of things that we do in society that are considered normal, but in reality, they make no sense. You're like, this is fucking weird. This man is out here buying a pack of cigarettes. It's like $15, $20 nowadays, which is insane. And I'm a former smoker, so I know what I'm talking about here because I used to do that all the time. So like I'm out here, outside of a restaurant smoking a cigarette, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Why did I spend money to do this? Like, I mean, obviously it's addiction. That's big reason, probably the main reason why people do shit like that. But there's lots of things to say. That wasn't the greatest example. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sure if I sat here and I thought about a better example, I would give it to you. But I wonder how things are gonna be even further down in the future. You know, like even though I want to say something positive about modern video gamers, right? Modern video gamers they're pushing the envelope because of modern video gamers. So it's like right now there's so much focus on graphics, right? Everything's 4K, and pretty soon 8K is going to be normalized. I'm still playing on 1080p. I think I said this before, just because I don't want to put a strain on my graphics. I got a gaming laptop. I got a 3060, like a mobile RTX 3060, which is more than enough for 1080p gaming. And I play on 1080p, and I've said this story before. I'm pretty sure about how I used to have the PlayStation 4 Pro, and I would play Assassin's Creed Odyssey in 4K on it. And I would compare, and then on my computer, I would be playing, whatever game I was playing at the time. I was playing Cyberpunk on 1080p. Actually, I was playing it on 720p because that game is so demanding that I couldn't run it at the time in my old hardware. So I had to play it on 720 or whatever. But I also played other games on 1080p, and I would always, I would always compare them. I would always look at Assassin's Creed in 4K, and then whatever game I was playing in 1080p, and the differences were not that huge. And I used to sit there and I used to be like, why are people making such a gigantic deal about switching over to 4K, or even 2K, which is 1440, I believe. um I'm like, it's not that big of a jump. Don't get me wrong, it is noticeable. I'm not gonna sit here and say that, oh, you can barely see it. No, things look sexier in 4K. That's without a shadow of a doubt. But it's not so bad in 10. It's like I don't feel like it's a dramatic jump. It is a jump. It's probably a skip or so, but it's not a dramatic jump. It's not enough for me to go, okay, I'm convinced. But then again, I'm a practical guy. Also, marketing. I'm 100% sure the marketing machine has got behind trying to sell its hardware, whether it's Nvidia, whether it's AMD, whether it's Intel, whether it's PlayStation, whether it's Toshiba, whatever it's whether it's a gaming console or TV. Of course, the marketing machine has got behind. Hey, we're gonna keep buying hardware, keep upgrading. 4K is not enough. 4K is not enough. Pretty soon, 8K is not going to be enough. You have to do 12K. One thing about modern gamers is that I feel like they are pushing the envelope. They're pushing because they want games to be more graphically demanding. They want them to be beautiful. They want uh, video game developers, in my opinion, as well as publishers and just technology in general, is getting a force push. Like, we got to keep pushing the envelope. We got to keep making games more fluid, more beautiful, more taxing. So that's one good thing about video games. Like, I can tell you right now that if I was to snap my fingers and 5 years would pass, whatever game I play 5 years from now is going to be fucking crazy. Right? I mean, I guess you can say that about pretty much anything, right? If you snap your fingers and then 5 years later, the iPhone that you had 5 years ago is going to be significantly better. Sorry, the iPhone that you would have now would be significantly better than the iPhone you had 5 years ago. Of course, you can say that just about anything, but with technology, things in the world of technology, things move fast. You know what I'm saying? Like if you owned a car for 2 years, people will go like, "Oh, okay, that's a new car," even though 2 years have passed. But if you say, "I have a phone, I had this phone for the last 2 years," people would be like, "Damn, that phone is old," and you're like, "That's crazy because it's the same amount of years." So when it comes to like technology, I feel like things evolve. So many updates, and then you've got hardware drops. So it's like in 3 years, your phone is like grandpa. It's like grandpa old. You know what I mean? You might as well have a flip phone. If you're walking around today in 2022 with like an iPhone 8, people would be like, "Oh, that's old." And I'm like, not in the grand scheme of things. It's not really that old. What was it again? It was a I read somewhere on a website. As a matter of fact, let me pull that up. I think it says techjury.net. I've never heard of this website. So I can't even tell you if it's like an official one or not. But I will say that they did say something that kind of caught my eye, and they said that the video game market is worth it's worth $250 million. Sorry. Yes. Did I say quarter billion? Yeah. So it's like $256 billion. I think it's worth, and it's only climbing up. And one thing that was the interesting that wasn't just the interesting thing that I was thinking about. I also was thinking about, they said that it's more like prevalent than Hollywood. It says it is more significant than even Hollywood. Those are their exact same words. So they're saying Sony Interactive Entertainment is the rich kid on the block. So I'm guessing Sony in the video game world is the cash cow here. That's the number one breadwinner here. But they also said it is more significant than even Hollywood. I'm not 100% sure what they mean by that. Like significant in the sense that it makes more money than Hollywood, or it's more prevalent than Hollywood. But I can see that. I can see video games already being bigger than Hollywood financially, and also not only financially but also just in the public eye. It has more visibility than Hollywood. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I feel like you know there's like a I don't know. I feel like there's more video games that come out than movies. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not too sure. What would video games be in the future? From what I've also read is VR, but I didn't need to read that. I kind of guessed, also that, in the future it's going to be immersive, right? Like it's going to be more virtual reality. It's going to be more finding a way to connect you with your hardware, right? Whether it's a vest that, produces vibrations, or, music, or, or even smells. I remember they were working on something like I think it was for like the Resident Evil game that was coming out at the time. Maybe it was Resident Evil 4. I'm not sure, but I think it was GameCube. Or it was Nintendo. I may be wrong. I haven't looked this up in years, but I remember they're saying they were going to put this like oil scented vial of some sort that you can hook it up to the GameCube or whatever game console it was, and the heat would eventually release some sort of a scent. And that scent can be pretty much anything. It can be related to whatever game you're playing. So if like you're playing Resident Evil, I think it was Resident Evil 4, you can smell blood. It's like this artificial vial of like fake blood, which I this gotta smell terrible. But I thought that was a cool concept. I wouldn't want that shit because it seems like a hazard. First of all, you fuck around and burn your house down. But also just I don't want to smell blood or anything else disgusting like that. Even if it was something good, it's like having a Glade that you plug into like your console. I think that's. I mean, I'm not gonna. I mean, it can be gimmicky. I can see how it would become gimmicky quickly, but that's the future of gaming. Eventually, it would just be immersive. They've already came out. I think it was like the Sega Genesis came out with some vest that every time you got hit in the game, you would feel like these sharp vibrations or whatever. But I think that technology is just going to get perfected as time goes on. You know what I mean? Nostalgia. Also, this is. I feel like I'm kind of just regurgitating what this website is saying, but once again, it's funny because it's like you don't have to. This website doesn't have to tell me this because I'm like I've already. Anybody who's been playing video games the last 10 years can pretty much like none of this is really shocking to them. You know what I mean? And what I'm about to say isn't shocking either, which is nostalgia is a huge market in video gaming. But ta-da, not shocking at all. But taking games that have already come out and redoing them, And this right here deserves an entire episode on its own, which is just reboots and remakes and uh what's the other word that they use? D demakes, remakes and demakes. I think sometimes they'll take a title, a franchise, some sort of an IP, and demake it, quote unquote. They would turn it into like 16 bits or 18 bits or whatever. Sorry, 8 bits. So nostalgia is a huge market in the video game world. You know, sometimes that shit don't make sense. I'll give you one now. The Last of Us being remade again. I'm like, why? Why? You know, like who genuinely asked for that? Like, and I'm hearing that's just gonna start a trend in the video game world now, where games that came out 3 years ago are gonna be remade, and it's just like, dude, that game just came. Like, give it some time. It needs to become a classic, like a cult classic, before you remake it. You need to give it some time. That's just my opinion, but it is what it is. You know, I'm talking shit when they're literally remaking every Resident Evil, like, and they're all awesome. Like the Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and now the 4 remake. They're all fucking great games. So I can't even be mad at that. I'm like, if it on paper it sounds so ridiculous. It's like we're gonna remake every game we've ever done. Like we're gonna try it again. You know what I mean? I'm like, why? Like, just move on to something else, or just make a better version of your franchise, a more modern one. But those Resident Evil games are fire, so I can't even be mad at the strategy because it works. I'm like, okay, it's good quality stuff, but I'm sure that's not all across the board. I'm sure there's some remakes or some reboots out there that are complete ass that people are just like. I think Warcraft. I think it was a World of Warcraft remake recently that people were terribly pissed at. I never played World of Warcraft, so I'm not too sure, but I remember lots of people were upset. And also Saints Row, the newest Saints Row that came out this year, 2022, I believe. Lots of people weren't really happy with the game. I never played Saints Row either, so I don't have a valid opinion on that. I do hope that I remember Sid Meier, right? I think I never play. I wasn't I didn't play a lot of Sid Meier games, but I think he had like Civilization as well as other games. Huge guy in video gaming, right? I remember he wrote in his book a long time ago, a few years ago. I remember reading this, and once again, just like the website I'm reading now, like I already knew this, but seeing it in words, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, kind of like validates what I felt for a while. And he was also saying that video gamers nowadays are more impatient. They want shit done quickly. It's like it's hard. I get scared because I want great single player experiences, like the Fallout series, as well as the Witcher series, Zelda, lots of single player games. I hope that they don't go in. I hope they don't go extinct in favor for multiplayer games, which I don't have a problem with. Like, multiplayer games are cool, man. It's always cool to have a multiplayer game, but sometimes not everything needs to be multiplayer. Sometimes a game needs to be single player because that's what the vision was, and but nowadays I feel like that's another quality from the younger demographic would be that they want to always play with their friends, and that's, once again, I don't have a problem with that one. The impatience, maybe. Yes, I do have a problem with that, but the fact that they want multiplayer games, that's cool. But I just hope that they, if you're one of those that wants to play multiplayer games all the time, cool. But understand that, like, not every game has to be a multiplayer game. You have to, like, come to some sort of an agreement with me there. You know, Meet me halfway and go, okay, we don't have to make Starfield, the next Bethesda game that's coming up. We don't have to make that multiplayer cross-platform. Like, can that just remain a single-player game? Um, Even games like Elden Ring, which is like a Dark Souls successor. Dark Souls was like, I would say it's traditionally single player, but it's kind of not, because you could have kind of played multiplayer. You can drop in someone's world or whatever and like fight them and shit. But in its core is a single player game. Those multiplayer modes are kind of tacked on. So I just hope that we continue going. So far, I don't feel like we veered off into a wrong direction. We did veer off into a different direction, and that's fine, because that's what happens in life, right? we move on, and things, you can't sit here and count on things always being the same, in and out of the video game world. You have to be accepting towards change, and even though you may not like it, you have to understand that this is the way it is. Of course, not all the time. Sometimes you do have to fight it. Sometimes you do have to stand up and be like, no, I refuse for this to change, for whatever reasons that may be, but not all the time. I would say most of the time in life, you kind of just have to go, that's the way it is, most of the time, not all the time. And I feel like I've reached that level in video gaming in general, especially modern video gaming, which there's a lot of cool titles to come out. I do feel like it's a little cookie cutter. Some games have gotten to be a little more cookie cutter. Like I feel like there's a lot of hand holding. There's a lot of crazy tutorials. When I say crazy tutorials, I mean like they're mandatory tutorials. That's the word I should have used. And that's cool. That's all right to have a tutorial. And I'm not too big on them. I feel like some of them are a little overbearing. But honestly, tutorials are like the least of my worries. For real, they're so small in my list of worries. I don't even know why I just brought that up. To be honest with you, I'm not that tutorials is not really a big issue for me. But I would say that like open world games are getting kind of bland, which is weird, right? Like they're a dime a dozen now. You can find an open world game pretty much every publisher makes like some version of an open world game. And it's kind of sad when something that's supposed to be so explorative and something so huge that you'll be excited to explore every inch of it, sometimes can be very bland and very lifeless, and you get bored. You're just walking around, you're flying around or whatever you're doing, and you're kind of like, there's really nothing here that's engaging me and it makes me want to stay into this world. And you know I can think of certain games. I can think of like Ubisoft. Sorry, Ubisoft. Ubisoft makes some good games, man. They always make some good games, but in my opinion, some of their games, some of their titles, I find myself thinking that, and I find myself thinking that more with Ubisoft games than any other company. Like it's just, you play the games for a while, you're like, this is a beautifully crafted world, everything is cool, the mechanics are dope, but you kind of just get bored. I don't know what it is about it. It's just like, I don't know. It's just lacking the soul. It's just lacking some sort of pizzazz to keep you exploring and stuff. Let's hope things continue moving into a path that is great. And then I hope that 10 years from now, video games don't veer into just everything is subscription based, and everything is multiplayer, and everything is loud and vibrant. And also, let's not forget that a lot of political influence is also in our video games. A lot of woke shit is in our video games. And some of it has a cool message. Luckily, I've encountered a lot of woke shit, like Cyberpunk, and you know, um, games like Weird West, which is a great, phenomenal game. Recommend that. There's kind of woke shit going on there, but luckily nothing has been intrusive. Like, I wouldn't say that it's enough for me to bitch about, but it is enough for me to be worried, because when I talk about where are video games going, 10 years from now or in the future, I hope that it doesn't go into a political area where, you can't talk about certain subjects, everything is censored, everything is sanitized, everything is scrubbed clean. And it's like, you've got this pretty boring, everyone is scared to push the envelope or start some controversy or say something that is spicy. And when I say spicy, I mean like something that'll make you go like, wow, they went there, they said that, that's crazy. Like, take risks. And I feel like that's when things shine the most. That's when comedians shine the most. That's when music shines the most. That's when video games shine the most. That's when movies shine the most. Is when you take that risk. When you're willing to risk reputation and risk controversy. I feel like that's where the gold is. That's where you want to be if you want to be known as successful. And of course, you shouldn't just be doing that intentionally, in purpose, on purpose. You should, have a reason as to why you're being provocative. I can't say the word. You should have a reason why you're being controversial. You should have a reason why you're pushing the envelope. You shouldn't just do it for the sake of it. We have enough of that. We have enough quote unquote celebrities that are just being assholes for the sake of being assholes, and they're getting lots of views and clicks for it, therefore getting rich. I think video games aren't going nowhere no time soon. As a matter of fact, I don't think that. I know that, so that's good. We're always going to have that. It's like my favorite hobby. And the trajectory so far seems pretty good, although a little worrying with the woke shit and also with the monetization of everything. And this is the Netflixication. I'm putting up air quotes in the air like you can see that shit. So far, so good though. Maybe a few years from now I'll be singing a different tale. But for right now, nothing against modern gamers. They're cool. They're not all negative. And retro gamers also. They're not all negative. And oh well, look. One last thing I will say is that one bad quality about a retro gamer would be that they refuse to change. They want things the way that they are. Oh, why can't things be this way? Why can't things stay that way? And I feel like that's an old man mindset, right? Like usually people who are older, they have that mindset. Like I want this order to be this order forever. And it's just like, bro, that's not the way life works. Like I said earlier, most of the time you just have to accept the change. Like you have to be willing to be flexible. You have to be willing to adapt. So that's one negative thing about retro gamers. But overall, man, regardless of retro or not, I don't want to sound like I'm dividing anyone, man. I'm just glad everyone's playing. Even if you're playing sports games, which I don't fucking like at all. Besides combat sports, which makes sense because that's, you can't go out there and just fight random people, but you can go out there and play soccer. You can go out there and play baseball. You can go out there and play basketball and football. So when someone's playing indoors, it's a little weird to me. Somebody said to me that they have RPG elements now. You can buy sneakers and all that. I'm like, okay, all right. You can buy sneakers in like 2K, NBA 2K. I'm like, all right, okay. I don't know. I'm an old man now, so I wouldn't get these things. So it is what it is. We're in tip top shape. Well, I wouldn't say tip top shape, but we're in great shape in this giant ship. We're all navigating together in these waters, and so far the coast is clear. Let's just hope we don't see an iceberg. Peace.